Hi, I'm just responding to a UK column news article that was just shared on my Facebook, and I've tried to share it and to show it again, but unfortunately it's disappeared now suddenly off Facebook for some reason. So basically, I'm not entirely knocking UK column because they do a lot of brilliant work, and I do support them in that, and I really appreciate them, especially the work that they're doing for child rights and child welfare, and exposing that insidious crime that is undermining the very core of our humanity. But I've always been at odds with their anti-EU approach, because it's easy to point out the bad things about the EU. It's actually even more easy to point out the bad things about British Parliament. I mean, the corruptions of the EU pale into insignificance when you compare them to the corruptions of Britain's Parliament, this government, and the Blairite government before it, and the Thatcher government before that. Okay, what we're looking at is an attack. British culture has been under attack, not through immigrants, no, through our own government, because British culture, like I say, was what was established after World War II. True British culture, all the rights and benefits that population gave to future generations, this Tory government has just decimated them. It's decimated them. We've got private corporations profiting off our benefits system. We've got private corporations doing all the jobs, profiting off the fact that British towns and cities need services. They're profiting off it. Jobs that were council run, with all the benefits of being a council staff, pensions and work rights to working hours, all gone, replaced by these corporations, private corporations, collecting our rubbish, doing this, doing that, running our water. And the first thing they do is slash the amount of staff they employ, less wages, less rights, worse working conditions. All of these come with these private vampires. That's what they are. They're vamping. They're vamping off our needs. Now they want to hand our NHS over. After Brexit, our NHS going to be run to earn profits for private American health insurance companies. Oh, in exchange for America providing us food that's banned in the EU. You know, I've said it all before, but here, and this is why I'm making this video, as a voice of reason in the face of what UK Column News is saying today, because apparently, you know, they're really concerned about this EU army. Right, well, I'll leave you a link to one of my videos, a treasonous Tory plot exposed, that shows you the true fears of army we should be worrying about. As I say, gnat and camel. Okay? The people are confused to the extent that they're straining at the gnat in order that they can swallow the camel. And in this case, the gnat is an EU army, which Europe has every right to have its own European army. Why not? If a government turns rogue and starts denying its people their human rights, yes, thank you, EU army, come in and throw that government out that's starving its own people, that's refusing to give them justice, that's making them live in a police state to serve corporate rules, corporate law, because that's what's going to be the law in Britain. All these people going on about sovereignty, as I've explained before, no. It's going to be corporation. Corporate. You're going to be corporate fodder. To live by corporate rules and corporate regulations. And your justice will come through the corporate courts from your fully corporate government. And what do those corporations have collectively? Corporate military, DynCorp. Check the links under the video, my video that I've said I'll share under this. A Tory treasonous plot. Check the links, check the information. We're talking about a corporate military, a corporate army who are based in Britain, who have powers to bring staff, as many staff as they like, from abroad, as long as they pay them over £30,000 a year. Right? So that means these corporations, they can bring army personnel from all over the world, and they have got them everywhere. They've got them in Iraq, they're training in Yemen right now. Think about the corporate army that this government can hire. They can hire the corporate army to oppress the British people. And that now is happening in Australia. So I'll just get you the link up, okay? So here we go. New laws will allow use of military to break protests. And this is in Australia. The Turnbull government recently introduced legislation into Parliament designed to lower the threshold for calling out the Australian Defence Force, ADF, to assist state police forces with public incidents. ADF personnel can enhance the ability of state police in dealing with an incident. You know, this is what's going on in Australia now. Do not think for one moment that this will not be happening in Britain, and it will be a corporate military. It will be a private corporation, right? A private corporate army. Along with the potential for a Paris terrorist attack style incident being carried out in Australia, make streamlining the process of calling out SAS or commando regiments necessary. See, they're all looking at France. They don't want that happening in their own countries. So Australia's already taking steps. Believe you me, Britain has not invited DynCorp to set up shop in Britain for no reason. It has not given them the powers to bring in as many of their own staff as they want from abroad for no reason. That's why all these people, you're going on about the poor immigrants. What is it? Is it the fact that they're poor that you don't like? Well, how about mercenary, soldier, military immigrants that nobody's talking about? You won't hear about them. They'll just be here. So this is a very serious issue, okay? And so that is why I am calling out UK column on that. And also this idea that this Brexit thing, we've only got two choices. Either we take the crap deal or we go for a hard Brexit. Both of them horrible, okay? Both of them going to damage our country, our economy, everything in our country. When actually we've got a third option that really nobody is paying much attention to. As if, oh no, we can't do that. We could just cancel Brexit. That's what the EU has said. Cancel it. Let's cancel it. Because it was only a minority majority that voted to leave the EU. And actually, a lot of people who should have been out there voting, who did really want to stay, didn't bother to vote because they didn't even think that it would be possible that we were going to be leaving the EU. They didn't really believe that people could be that stupid, that they would actually support a campaign that involved the murder of Joe Cox MP. And far-right extremists. So that's the third option. And actually, I am thoroughly aware that a fair portion of the people who voted leave regret that decision, and they would like a chance to make amends. So I say let's have another referendum now. Now the people know what it really means, because the BBC failed to inform the public that they demand licence money off. They failed to inform the public of the facts. Okay, well, now we know the facts. We know it is going to absolutely decimate our society. And we are talking about higher interest rates and rapid falls in house prices. So people will end up be paying more for the mortgage for a house that is worth less than their mortgage. Your mortgage rates will go up to be paying for a house that is worth less than your mortgage. That is how ridiculous it is. And that's what you're facing. That is what you're facing, Britain. You're facing the majority of jobs to British people are going to be below £30,000 a year. And these corporations that are taking over every facet of British society in terms of our services and industries, providing for our needs, our healthcare, even our education. They're taking over it, and they can bring their staff in from abroad. And so we will actually end up being governed by bulk in our authorities by foreigners. People whose only allegiance to this country is the corporation and all their corporate rules that they're working for. So, you know, it is a road to hell, and that's why it does concern me when news providers like UK Column, who like I say, I do hold in high esteem, I have a lot of respect for them, but I do think UK Column, you do need to abandon this anti-EU, because anti serves the thing that you're anti against. That's how it is. We need to be pro-life, pro-rights, pro-EU, and when we're in the EU, make sure that the EU improves and that itself rids itself of the corruption. If you don't like, if you feel something's corrupt within the EU, speak out, Britain. Speak out, other EU countries. Let's sort it out. Let's find a way forward. But cutting off our nose to spite our face is not a way forward. And as UK Column, you know, and they are correct in that, whether Britain is part of the EU or not, whether we have our hard Brexit or not, we're still going to be part of this EU army. So it is very, very serious. It's a serious issue when we think about, well, all right, there's going to be armies in this world. That's the fact of it. There's armies. So are we going to have an army run by the EU, which every country is involved, and that military is a force of power that has to, by law, adhere to all the rights and regulations of the EU? That means honouring and respecting human rights. Or are we going to, because we're so xenophobic about the idea of an EU army, that instead we're going to abandon that, okay, abandon the EU and actually put ourselves in the hands of the corporate military, who have no adherence to human rights. They just serve whoever's paying them, whether that be a government or a private corporation. They just serve them. They serve their desires. Okay. Oh, we need these people are rioting, they're protesting, they're going crazy because we're forcing them to live below the poverty line and work every hour God sends. So they're angry. We need them to be made peaceful. We need you, corporate army, to maintain the peace. Is that peace? Is that peace? No. It's people beating people up with a big stick. Thieves and murderers beating people up to shut them up so that they can carry on with their thieving and murdering. A real army defends and protects what's good, what's innocent, what's vulnerable, what's right. A real army upholds the law. These corporations are entirely lawless, as we have seen, as we have witnessed. So I'm sorry, UK column. I know that there's bad things infiltrated into the EU, like common purpose. I thoroughly understand. They were set up purely to vamp off the funding that came from the EU. That's what they were there for, to absorb it all like a sponge. And that's why, partly the reason why British people aren't really enamoured of the EU, because the British people on the ground haven't really benefited from all this EU funding. The people who benefited are people like Common Purpose, the councils and councillors and the corporations that they've been feeding them with EU money, EU funding, not the communities, the run-down communities that the money was there for, to rebuild and actually develop. No, the councillors in every area of Britain, the councils have been vamping off those funds. The money hasn't, you know, like for example, Sheffield Council, they have gobbled up hundreds of millions of EU funding that was meant for the poorest communities in Sheffield. They really have. They have done that. But that's not the fault of the EU, is it? That's the fault of the British people. That's the fault of the ignorance. The casual, oh well, there's nothing we can do about it. So you think, is it going to take you to be having a skeleton healthcare service and no money and unable to afford the cost of living? Is that what it's going to take for you to suddenly realise, I've got to do something about this? And you think standing on the street protesting and getting violent like's happening in France, you think in this country that is going to achieve anything except more power to the police state that this government wants to implement anyway? Because by then you've lost all of your rights. You have no muscle, because that's what rights and law is. It's a muscle. If you don't use it, it will grow weak. If you don't exercise your rights and your laws, they will grow weak to the point that they become like a fantasy. Oh yes, well, we know that David Cameron's, Gordon Bowden's got evidence to prove that David Cameron has been involved in massive financial fraud and theft, but it's too big to prosecute. So, you know, all the laws, when it comes to David Cameron, those laws, they're just a fantasy. And people accept that. The BBC uphold that. When it comes to protecting our children, EU child protection directives, they're just a fantasy. But the abuse our children are suffering isn't a fantasy. The ignorance displayed by our police forces that facilitate ever increasing crimes against children, that's not a fantasy. The fact that child abusers in Britain are able to operate with impunity, that's not a fantasy. The thousands of children being trafficked into Britain every year, hundreds of them murdered in what the UN describe as brutal religious ceremonies, okay? That's not a fantasy. These things are facts. But instead, we're all going to worry about an EU army. Worry about your children. Worry about their future.